Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Tuesday, the 14th of August, 2018, right at the point where I've got some downpours and thunderstorms rolling through the area even as we speak. So hope everybody had a good day. Thankfully, it looks as if we're going to get a couple of a day's break here. Let me just say hi to Anthony Orr, Scott Briller. See, I do say hi. I didn't forget you today. You know, what happens a lot of times is I try to get everybody, and I really make a very conscious effort of going through your questions and comments, and sometimes I do miss you. So please be forgiving, like D.O. Nankumar, Delvin, always a big hello to both of you. Jake, you want to know, my day was good, and kind of cigars do I smoke? I actually like La Flor Dominica. The 700 Maduro is my go-to cigar, with a glass of port in the other hand. That's although there are a few others that I smoke, but that's the one that is my favorite. Since you did ask, thank you for asking. Let's see. We've got the storms just moving through Nassau County, says Box 505, Jason Schaefer. Shocked that you haven't seen a flood warning in Nassau. They've got flood advisories up. You know, you've got the flood advisory, and then you have the flood warning, and then you have the flash flood warning. I think all of this stuff is kind of confusing after a while. I mean, I understand the difference. I think most weather enthusiasts understand the difference. I think most folks in the general public don't, you know, and we'll go through it at another time. But we've got, the bottom line is that we do have some hefty cells moving through. None of them, by the way, as last I checked, and let me just check one more time here, none of them, I'm not seeing any severe thunderstorm warnings. We did have a flash flood warning up for much of New York City, but that is now done. And we've got flood advisories up for Nassau and Suffolk County, Western Suffolk County, because of what's moving through at the moment. And again, always remember, folks, it's 6:03, so you're seeing this in real time. But if you're watching this on a replay, obviously the radars are dated, so you want to check your latest radars and any watches or warnings that are up for your particular area by going to your local National Weather Service forecast office, and you can access that by going to weather.gov. Now, let's start with the local radar for the New York City area, and we can take a look at areas down also as far south as Delaware and as far east as eastern Long Island and Connecticut. There are two bands of thunderstorms, and this is all rotating around this upper low that is finally beginning to weaken and pull away to the northeast. That upper low is actually centered up in central New York. By the way, parts of Pennsylvania, particularly northern Pennsylvania, absolutely hammered with rain overnight, and for the first part of today. There's a ton of flooding up in parts of northeast and north central Pennsylvania from the rains of the last several days or more, and the rain in the last 3 weeks measured in feet in some areas. There's been that much. This is the last of it. We are going to see a break for a couple of days, which is good news, but these two bands here rolling through. The second band, the first band now crossing Long Island, and actually there's a very strong cell that's holding together for a change as it moves into Suffolk County. And then we have the second band behind it that is pushing to the east. And then there's a third area of downpours now over northeastern Pennsylvania. I think eventually that area will likely weaken. And those storms, by the way, extend down into South Jersey and over into northeastern Maryland. I don't see any, let me just freshen this up in case there's a late issue with regards to any kind of severe weather warning, and I don't see any boxes popping up, so that's good news. The biggest problem, because of all the rain that has fallen from these storms, really is the fact that any additional rain is going to create some quick flash flooding. The threshold is so low at this point with regards to flash flooding. Here's the satellite loop this evening, and the distinct spinning that is the upper air storm sitting over north central New York And you're getting these convective bands of thunderstorms that have developed and are rotating counterclockwise around it. That is making progress, moving away to the northeast. And you notice west of there, we do have some drier air, relatively speaking. It's not going to have a whole lot of impact on the humidity the next couple of days because it's still going to be high. But I think at least for for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, certainly tomorrow should be rain-free unless there's an isolated downpour or storm that develops in the late afternoon. I think the vast majority tomorrow is going to be rain-free. It's just going to be a hot, humid day, and temperatures getting up close to 90 in some places. Thursday should also be a hot, humid day, upper 80s to near 90, maybe a few more clouds coming into the mix. I'm leaving downpours and storms out of the forecast for Thursday, but they could affect some areas inland Thursday evening with some lead cells. But that's a timing issue, and we'll deal with that more tomorrow and especially on Thursday. Now, let's set the table going forward because here's the Weather Prediction Center's rainfall forecast map. And the good news is that the rainfall amounts for the next 7 days, as they see it, in the northeast, look relatively minimal near the coast. The dark blue is basically 3/4 of an inch or less. And this is starting at 8 o'clock tonight. So the storms that we're getting this evening aren't even included in all this. I'm not 100% sold on the idea of the amounts being that low, but we'll respect their forecast because they actually do a fairly decent job with these long-range outlooks. But notice the large area of rains being indicated for much of the middle Mississippi Valley, eastward into the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, and then kind of snaking its way up into western New York along the lake shores into upstate New York. It's areas in and around Lake Ontario were in a drought mode for a while, and now they've flipped completely to the other direction with all the rains that they've experienced in the last week or so, and now they're all flooded out up there. So the extremes, the swings have been rather extreme from one end to the other. So let's bring front and center now the radar, the national radar, and we'll start with our view of the northeast, where you can actually see the upper low, the rotation, that counterclockwise rotation. It looks like the upper low is now probably somewhere north of Binghamton, the way I'm judging from these echoes. Because if you look at the radar echoes up near Lake Ontario, they're actually moving north to south. And the echoes that are in northeastern Pennsylvania are moving northwest to southeast. And then if you look at the echoes that are up through New England, those are moving south to north. So somewhere in there is that upper air circulation that we showed you on the satellite view. And it's moving away to the northeast, and it's weakening. That is the important thing, because then we can finally see that improvement that we've been forecasting. We've got some cells along the Carolina coast, north and south, and down into southern Georgia as well. Busy with some thunderstorms this evening in the Florida Panhandle, and also kind of busy in and around Tampa, St. Pete, south to about Port Charlotte, and extending west to just south of Orlando, it seems. Every day in Florida is always an adventure trying to see where these thunderstorms are going to develop. Activity in the plains and in the middle Mississippi Valley. This is with another upper low that is spinning away, and you can see the rotation there somewhere in north central Kansas, with echoes in Missouri moving northward, and the echoes that are in Nebraska and Kansas moving southward and rotating around it. This upper low is going to continue to produce showers and storms there, and it's all part of the equation for all that heavy rain we saw on the map for the from the Weather Prediction Center. Scattered showers and storms in the central Rockies and in the southwest. Also a little bit of activity in the eastern parts of California and on up through Nevada, or Nevada. And on up and through the northern plains, we also have some scattered showers and storms. Looks like a pretty hefty line of storms there moving through here at 6:11 Eastern Time across northwestern Wisconsin. Once again, disclaimer, dated stuff if you're watching this on a replay, so check your latest radars and for any watches and warnings at weather.gov. Okay, so going forward, where are we at? Well, I can tell you that at least with respect to the east, and we're going to start with the NAM model tonight. We get rid of this upper low, so the next 2 days look good. You can see the system that's out to the west of the middle Mississippi Valley starts to translate eastward, and that brings in the threat. I'm not really too concerned about Thursday evening. I'm basically keeping Thursday, for me anyway, Wednesday and Thursday rain-free, but then we're going to get into some showers and storms. It looks like late Friday afternoon and Friday evening. And then a weather front moves through. We only have, obviously, out to 84 hours on the NAM, and the GFS kind of lines up the same way. But this weather front is probably going to get hung up for a bit, and at least from what we saw on the prior runs. Got the new GFS model, and we'll first, before we do that, we'll take the look at the old run, and then we'll look at what the new run does, and it'll be the first time that I'm seeing it. So that push of thunderstorms Friday night moves through, but the front kind of hangs around, and you'll notice there's a wave there Saturday afternoon sitting over New York City. So it certainly would argue that there could be some scattered downpours running around on Saturday, and then an onshore flow for Sunday, which could make things rather cloudy and perhaps bring in some downpours, although it doesn't really look particularly vigorous here. It looks like there's a bit more vigor in the action going on Sunday night across the plains and the Mississippi Valley there, as the next system starts to swing in from the Great Lakes. Now, models, again, are going in different directions for next week. The GFS wants to make another cutoff to our west for the middle part of next week, but it kind of gets it out of the way in relative short order. It has downpours and thunderstorms beginning on Tuesday and lasting into Thursday before things start marching along. But it has a different solution from the European, which I'll get to show you the upper air in both of them in a second. But I want to come back to the GFS and look at the latest run to see if it continued along the same path. We might not be out far enough. But here's, Thursday and Friday, Wednesday and Thursday, hot and humid, bad hair weather, etc., etc. Looks like the thunderstorm activity will be more of the daytime variety as you head down south. And then on Friday, we've got this weather front that approaches with some showers and storms Friday evening. More numerous as you get down into the Carolinas, you can see there too, down into Georgia. And then the front looks like it wants to get hung up. There's the high that builds on Sunday. It wants to try and push the front a bit further to the south, so we'll be watching for that. But it keeps an onshore flow here even into Monday. So that's kind of important, because that might mean that the next system could be dropping in to the Ohio Valley as a cutoff low, much like the one we just saw. And here's the hint of it here on the new GFS. Doesn't go out far enough yet, but we'll backtrack. So here's the thing for next week. And we'll go back to the earlier run. And you know what? I'll go on the wider upper air, because this way you folks watching in the west can see whether you get back into a ridge position or not. So here's right now. This was earlier today. Our upper low say goodbye, and it gets better. Even the system, the upper low that's in the middle Mississippi Valley, just kind of opens up and weakens. But you do have some shortwave energy that comes into the Great Lakes on Friday. That's the system that we're talking about, weather front for Friday night and Saturday, gets hung up. Now here's where the GFS next week, it's going to drop another big, try to make another cutoff low right there south of Chicago. This is a big change. We've been going back and forth on this, where the model does either very little with this, or it's got some deep trough that swings through. We get a nice shot of dry air for 3 days and dew points in the 40s. Now it's gone to this idea with this cutoff low and 3 days of rain for the middle and latter part of next week, and it, eventually just kind of lifts it out, and we're just warm and humid after that. I'm not so I still think the jury is out. Of course, the pattern has been for these troughs to come in and cut off. Here's the Europeans' view, which is different. And now we have, this is Tuesday. Here's the European on Tuesday, and it basically just takes that trough and carries it along. If this is right, we're going to get a decent cold front coming through here probably Tuesday night, and a fairly decent shot of dry air and low dew points for a couple of days. It's nothing like the GFS is. This is more like what the GFS was on a couple of other runs before that. The argument here with the European, I think, is the fact that if you look up to the north, there's a strengthening vortex that's in Hudson's Bay that probably helps to move this along, where the GFS wants to separate it and cut it off. Here's the GFS's view. We're not out far enough on the new run, but let me backtrack here. So here's the GFS at 206. This is on day 9, okay, which is next Thursday. And here's the European for next Thursday. Totally different. Obviously, if you want the humidity to go away and you want a couple of nice days of reasonable temperatures and reasonable dew points, you want the European to be right. So we will see about that as we move ahead. Okay, let's look at the tropics, because we do have one system in the central Atlantic. You can see it here. If you look at the top of the screen, the top of your screen, you can see the clouds there about halfway across. That is a non-tropical low that perhaps, like Tropical Storm Debbie did a week or two or so ago, could acquire some tropical characteristics or subtropical characteristics. The Hurricane Center is allowing for that. Before we go close up, we continue to see a rather anemic-looking intertropical convergence zone with weak tropical waves along it. Still looking at hostile wind conditions across upper air wind conditions across much of the tropics, which is keeping tropical storm development at bay, and will likely keep it at bay, I think, at least for another week. Now, here's the system back in the central Atlantic. There is what looks like a low-level circulation here on the visible satellite loop, but we don't see very much thunderstorm activity near that center. There's actually nothing going on the north side or on the west side. So it still has a non-tropical feel to it, and it may need time for it to become subtropical. It is over an area where water temperatures are conducive for tropical storm development, but we're talking about it being way out. It's at about 35 degrees north and about 45 degrees west, where ocean water temperatures are at about 26 degrees Celsius. That would be warm enough to support a subtropical system or even a weak tropical storm, but that would be about it. Now, I wanted to show the water temperatures just to give you an idea of what's been happening in the Atlantic in the last week or so. We do have water temperatures that have warmed a bit across the tropical Atlantic, and they've also warmed off the southeast coast and east of Bermuda. The subtropical Atlantic has warmed up a degree or two, and of course it remains very warm in the Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico, with even a few pockets of 30-degree water. But it's important to look at the anomalies. And one of the things we have noticed in the last 7 days, there has been a bit of a shrinkage in the area of below average temperatures. But notice where the largest anomaly is of greater than 1 degree Celsius is in and around the Cabo Verde Islands. So the water temperatures would be supported for a tropical storm once you get now west of 35 degrees west. But even there, ocean water temperatures are running a bit below average. Please, I want to understand the distinction here. Even though water temperatures are below average throughout much of the tropical Atlantic, between 10 degrees north and 20 degrees north out to 60, they are supported. They can be supportive for tropical storm development, because when we look at the actual temperatures, the 28-degree isotherm here, which probably could support a hurricane, well, certainly could support a hurricane, is, west of 50 degrees west. So the water's warm enough to support a system. It's a matter of whether a system develops or not. That's a separate issue. And we have those strong upper air winds. But I just want to go back to the anomalies. The subtropical Atlantic has warmed also. So ocean water temperatures are running about normal now across much of the subtropical Atlantic, except for that small little patch there out at about 30 and 50, east to about 30 and 40. Notice that north of 40 degrees north, you've got a very large area where the ocean water temperatures are running 2 or more degrees above average. And actually, you can extend it down along the coastal shelf down to the North Carolina, Virginia coast, where we've got this pocket here of 2 degrees Celsius or higher. That translates to about 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit above average in that zone. So you're talking about water temperatures that are in the middle 70s to near 80 from Long Island on southward. Also, water temperatures up in the low 80s as far north as 40 and 70. So it'll be interesting to see if we do ever see a tropical system that was poised to try to move up the East Coast. What kind of impact that warmer than average water would have. I think what it would do is, if we had a scenario of a system coming up the coast, normally these systems do weaken once they get north of 35 degrees north. We'll probably see that weakening trend slowed to some degree we were to see the system go north of 35 degrees north. So that pretty much covers it tonight. With respect to severe weather, I'll bring up the Storm Prediction Center's map, and we just have a couple of areas of marginal risk in the eastern Carolinas, over Oklahoma, southern Kansas, in southern parts of Arizona, and then a marginal to slight risk as you move up through the northern Rockies. Otherwise, much of the activity looks to be scattered in nature, with the occasional line of storms. Where we were talking about that line of storms up in northwestern Wisconsin, there's actually no risk area being indicated there. So that's in just the general area of thunderstorms. So give me a second here. I just want to check my neck of the woods to make sure that we don't have any additional watches or warnings or anything like that, and no, we don't. So these thunderstorms, at least from the standpoint of strength, seem to be behaving themselves this evening, which is a good thing. How does Saturday look for Dio Nankumar, as your cousin is going to have a barbecue and a block party, to which I am now only hearing about this, Dio, for the first time. So, to ensure better weather, one needs to extend an invitation. Only teasing, of course. That front getting hung up is going to have a say. If we wind up seeing that onshore flow, that high in New England kind of push down a little bit, maybe that would save us on Saturday. I'm thinking of the 2 weekend days. I'm thinking Saturday may wind up being the better of the two. That's just a sense that I have. Rainbows across the Bronx from Mr. James Harris from the thunderstorms that went through there earlier. And I actually heard them when they went through here in Rybrook. They shook the building a little bit. Iron Mind, the thunderstorms are gone from Oceanside. Jason Kiefer, really dark and thundering where you are. And Johnny Quest, drying out for sure, or trying to anyway. Hopefully you'll catch a break. I don't know about Thursday so much, but tomorrow I would think that you would probably have a minimal amount of activity. Cynthia Guignaut, wettest summer in over 100 years for several National Weather Service office cities in central Pennsylvania. Absolutely incredible. Yes, it is. I was talking, by the way, I have a friend of mine who I fish with on occasion, who lives up in Halstead, near the Susquehanna River. And he told me this morning there's a lot of flooding up that way. The Susquehanna has not flooded yet, but a lot of the smaller rivers and streams and the tribs are in flood mode right now, and they certainly could use the break from the rain. Let's hope that the GFS is not right with that idea of another cutoff developing for next week. Let's hope that the European is correct that things just progress along. Just trying to get to everybody here. Wettest summer in over 100 years for Johnny Quest down in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Jason Schaefer, no major changes. Heaviest rain yet again along the spine of the Appalachians, and it's been like that for a month. Agreed. Although at least this weekend and the last couple of days, a large part of our area that was dry for I'm talking particularly some coastal areas from the last trough, made it up in a big way this time around. Weather Enlow, you're asking the wrong question. Do we expect a hurricane for Norfolk, Virginia later this hurricane season or not? You can't ask a question like that because it's unanswerable on my part. I don't know. What I can say is that the tropics remain inactive, and they look to stay inactive at least for the short term. Will we have some storms form? Yeah, I'm sure we will, and I'm sure we're going to get some sort of burst of activity at some point between now and the end of September. I would say that the fact that these troughs keep happening in the east is something we have to pay attention to in case a tropical system does develop. But you don't worry about you don't worry about something weeks from now that you really can't. I couldn't even begin to give you a qualified answer. Nobody can to that particular question. So stop worrying about it. Okay, relax. When there's something out there and you're within 5 days, then worry about it. In the meantime, just make sure you're ready for whatever may or may not happen. If I make it stop raining in Pennsylvania, ask Cynthia Guignaudas, I'll have a poolside barbecue for you every day for the rest of my life. Oh boy, that'll be a little tough to do in January up here in the Northeast when we'll be praying for the snows to stop. Michael Burrell, haven't you noticed it's been more thunderstorm activity lately? Also, you want this, happy birthday, Michael. Very, very clever to sneak your birthday in there into your comment. Actually, if this 5-year cycle idea is correct, and we hit bottom of the bottom of that cycle was last year, this could be a really interesting sign that thunderstorm activity in the Northeast will be increasing over the next 5 years as we head into a bit of an upcycle. But certainly this year, especially in the last 4 weeks, the thunderstorm activity has increased notably, and even for Long Island and some coastal areas where the boilerplate has been sitting, we've seen an increase in the amount of activity. Johnny Quest, we had a storm here 30 minutes ago, didn't last long, but dropped another ½ inch of rain. Will that front stall over your area this weekend or early next week? I think it is going to be, that's going to be a bit problematic with regards to your area. Let me just going to real quick off camera here look at the GFS, which by the way now seems to have gone the Europeans' way and has gone back to this idea of a solid push of dry air for the middle of next week. Johnny, the weather front stalls, but it stalls more along the coast and doesn't seem to set up. It seems to set up more along the coastal plain and not necessarily back westward to the mountains as we go through Saturday. It keeps a lot of the stuff south of you through Sunday and Monday, especially as that high starts to build back southward with the onshore flow. And then you get some showers and storms with a cold front late Tuesday and Tuesday night. And if judging from what I'm seeing here, the new GFS looks like the last run of the European. No cutoff on this run. Let's hope. This would be a nice push of dry air and low dew points for a couple of days if it's right. So keep, definitely fingers crossed on that. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to see how models settle out in the next couple of days because they keep going back and forth with this idea. And since the trend has been for these troughs and cutoffs to form, you don't want to stand on one run that says otherwise. Obviously, the models are struggling with the idea of whether we're going to get another trough dropping into the Ohio Valley and impact the weather in the Ohio Valley and in the east. So the jury is out. We'll look at it again tomorrow. Tim Day, I haven't been able to watch in a while, so I'm wondering the effect that the Hawaii volcano has had on the weather, especially El Nino. I don't think it has had any impact that I know of, but this is kind of above, I only sort of gave this a cursory look. You have to really kind of talk to people that know this stuff, that look into the volcanic activity. I don't believe that the ash plume was going all the way up into the top of the atmosphere from the Hawaiian volcano. So I'm going to say right now, no. The El Nino watch continues. It hasn't officially been called an El Nino yet, but you'd have to wonder, with the lack of activity in the Atlantic and the strong activity that's been going on in the Pacific, that maybe we are on our way into a weak El Nino, which might come in time for the winter. If you can, I need a lower third graphic with the date and a real-time clock. Oh, you work for CBS. Oh, very cool. Okay, well, you know what? I'll look around for something because that might come in handy. The only thing is I got to still figure out how to burn it into the live stream so that it doesn't disappear when I bring the map up. Okay, but that is a good idea to put a clock so people can see. And in case you're joining late, Iron Mind is referring to the fact that if you're watching this on a replay later on tonight, you're going to see dated radars. We're looking right now, it's just a little past 6:30 Eastern time. So as I've said twice already, so we'll say it one more time, severe weather, you want to check your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov for the latest watches, warnings, and the latest radar activity. J.S. Sweetie, I'm afraid Mother Nature will deplete herself of all the moisture now and will leave us with a snowless winter. Not necessarily. Remember, it's kind of apples and oranges with regards to what the atmosphere can hold moisture-wise in the summer versus what it can hold in the winter. So I wouldn't put too much worry in that. If it winds up being drier than normal in the wintertime, it won't be because of the fact that we overused our moisture allotment in the summer. All right, trust me on that. Will I be on Pix 11 this weekend? Nobody does it better, says Scott Briller. Thanks for saying that. Appreciate it. No, I won't be on this weekend, but next weekend, the weekend of the 25th, 26th, that Saturday and Sunday, I'll be doing both days at WPIX TV in New York. William Huber, something's still going on here. The rain lasted only 10 minutes and the thunderstorms just disappeared. They are kind of weakening as they move to the east. So that's probably the reason why the cell looked pretty strong as it moved into western Suffolk, but I imagine it's probably weakening a bit as it moves further east. So now we've got that second band that's behind it, and once that plays through, I think we're going to be done with the thunderstorm activity in my neck of the woods anyway, from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, including Long Island, New York City, Philadelphia, and everybody in between. That also includes Connecticut, Hartford, Bridgeport, Newark in New Jersey, Allentown, Scranton. We enjoy having all of you on here. Let me, by the way, Anthony Orr wanted me to share, Anthony being our resident statistician here on my YouTube channel, did send me something about Hector, and I didn't get a chance to read it because of the severe weather that broke, or was trying to break out here. Okay, why can't I see this? Oh, come on. There we go. So, here we go. So, it is the first tropical cyclone to traverse all three Pacific basins since Genevieve in 2014. Hector has broken records. The following, Hector currently holds the record for the most consecutive days as a major hurricane in the Northeast Pacific, which is 7.75 days or 186 hours. The previous record was 7 days with 1984's Hurricane Norbert, and Hector currently holds the record for most hours as a Category 4 in the Northeastern Pacific with 4 days, 96 hours total. Hector has the most accumulated cyclone energy, or ACE, in the Northeast Pacific since 1994's Hurricane John, and sources used Wikipedia confirmed as accurate information. So very interesting. And her last I checked, by the way, Hector is still out there as a, or it was, let me just see if it was still a tropical storm. And actually, no, it is now weakened to a tropical depression. It's at 28 north, 28.1 north, 172.4 east. Top winds are 35 miles an hour, and that advisory is being issued by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Doesn't happen too often when they cross the date line. So you heard what Anthony said. This did set a number of records along the way. The rain really cooled things down, says Box 505. Saw 69 on my car thermometer earlier. Don't think we've been below 70 for a while here in Nassau. And it does seem like the dew points haven't been below 70 either in a while. But might get a little bit of a break over the next couple of days, but still going to be very humid. Do thunderstorms that form early in the day have effect on thunderstorms that form later in the day? Asked Johnny Quest. It depends, and actually they can. For example, it happens a lot here. I'm not, you probably maybe less so because you get, your daytime heating is far more efficient where you are, and you're not subject to the marine layer. But sometimes when you have these warm front, cold front setups where you're waiting to get into the warm sector, the warm front comes through first, and if it's strong enough and you get these thunderstorms that form ahead of the warm front, you sometimes zap what I would refer to as basically zapping all the energy out of the atmosphere. So by the time the cold front swings through, it doesn't have a whole lot to work on. That doesn't always apply. You know, if you've got enough daytime heating, if you've got the wind coming from a non-ocean direction where the marine layer is not going to be an issue, you could wind up having strong storms in both early and late. But depending on the synoptic setup. But I've seen it happen here a number of times where you get some thunderstorms that form well ahead, or even if you are in the warm sector and you wind up with downpours and storms that form, that bubble up well ahead of the main line, and they basically kind of stabilize the atmosphere to some degree. So when the front approaches and you're supposedly getting into the area where you're going to have maximum vertical motion, you know, strong lift, there's not a whole lot for it to play with. And you wind up with basically duds when it comes to thunderstorm development from that respect. Green Fire 919, the sun triggered the storms quick this afternoon in the lower Hudson Valley. Yes, and the main lines today actually moved south of you. So this was an instance for a change where the further north you went, the less you got with these thunderstorms moving through this evening, whereas the storms were much more active as you went south toward New York City and down through New Jersey. All right, folks, coming up on 20 minutes before 7 o'clock, so we're going to put an end to it here. Thanks all of you for being here tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Just a quick mention of the Amazon and eBay links that are on the descriptor of this live stream or on the descriptor of this video. If you're watching it to this replay, you can use those links to do your shopping. We are participants in the affiliate programs for both Ebates and Amazon, and they're designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees from Ebates and Amazon by linking to their websites. And thank you very much for those of you who have used those websites in the past, and for those of you who may consider using them for back to school, Halloween, or Christmas when we get there. If I could Scott Briller, last question of the day. If we could forecast weather in any city, where would it be besides New York? Good question. I've done the Gulf Coast, so I've experienced that. I would say I'd like to try my hand at lake effect and be in an area that's a bit on the cosmopolitan side. So let's say Cleveland. I'd like to try Cleveland. I think the weather there is very interesting with the lake effect storms. With the lake effect snows that they get, and also in line for getting the regular overrunning systems that come through the winter time. I'd like to try Chicago, those two. And I probably would like to try one of the cities maybe in Montana or Wyoming. I'd like to experience a 100-degree temperature change in 24 hours when a Chinook wind kicks in, or the other way around when an Arctic front goes by and it goes from 60 to 20 below, and blizzard conditions. That is something I have not experienced yet in my lifetime. But that's a very interesting question, Scott. Thank you for asking it. All right, folks, have a great evening. I'll be back on at Facebook, by the way, at about 9:15. It's the usual time that we have the Joe Rayo, Joe Cioffi show, or as we call it, the Joe and Joe Weather Show. However, Joe is off this week, and he will be back on Monday, but then I will be off for a day, so the Joe and Joe Weather Show will resume next Tuesday. In the meantime, I will be soloing for the rest of the week. Barrow, Alaska, I do look at the weather, not every day, but at least once or twice a week. I do check what's going on in Barrow, Alaska, because I kind of find it fascinating for where they are located and the kind of weather that they have. It was snowing there yesterday, and pretty soon they're going to be going to more nighttime than daytime once we get to the autumnal equinox. But I like to see how the weather progresses there. It's got to be tough once they get the sunset and it doesn't come back for about from late November to late January. All right, folks, have a great evening. Be safe out there. Keep an eye to the sky if you're traveling, and we will either see you later on Facebook or we will see you tomorrow.